Millions of people scream at their TVs every weekend. They celebrate, rage, and feel genuine heartbreak over a game played by strangers. But at the exact same time, there are millions of others who feel absolutely nothing. No excitement, no tension, no emotional pull at all. And if you're one of them, you've probably asked yourself at some point, am I weird for not caring about sports? Here's the surprising truth. You're not. In fact, neuroscience suggests your brain may be wired differently in ways most people don't even realize. And once you understand what's happening in the brain, you'll never look at sports fans the same way again. To understand why sports fandom is so powerful, you have to go back thousands of years, long before stadiums, jerseys, or televised games ever existed. Humans didn't evolve as individuals. We evolved as tribes. Being part of a group wasn't just social, it was survival. Your tribe protected you, fed you, and gave you identity. Without it, you simply didn't make it. That instinct never disappeared. It just changed form. Today, sports have become one of the clearest modern versions of tribal identity. Team colors replace war paint, jerseys act like uniforms. Stadiums become gathering grounds where thousands of people unite under a shared symbol. And your brain treats it as something real. When fans watch their team play, their brains release oxytocin, the same bonding hormone involved in trust, connection, even family attachment. That's why people say things like "we won" or "our team," even though they've never met the players. Because psychologically, it feels like they belong to that group. And in a strange way, sports give adults something modern life rarely provides anymore: a safe way to experience tribal unity. No battles, no hunting, no real danger, just shared emotion, identity, and belonging, all centered around a game. If tribal instinct explains why people care about sports, dopamine explains why they can't stop. At its core, sports are built on three powerful psychological triggers: anticipation, uncertainty, and reward. Every time a game starts, your brain begins predicting outcomes. Will they score? Will they win? That anticipation alone starts releasing dopamine, the same chemical linked to motivation and desire. But here's where it becomes addictive. Unlike predictable rewards, sports operate on uncertainty. You never know what will happen next. A last-second goal, an unexpected comeback, a missed shot, each moment creates a surge of emotional tension followed by release. This pattern is known as intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive reward system in psychology. It's the exact same mechanism used in slot machines. Your brain doesn't get a reward every time, but when it does, it hits harder. That unpredictability keeps you coming back. In simple terms, every play becomes a small dopamine hit. Every match turns into an emotional roller coaster of highs and lows. And over time, your brain starts craving that cycle. That's why people don't just watch one game. They follow entire seasons. They argue for hours about teams and players. They check scores constantly, even when nothing is at stake. Because it's not just entertainment anymore, it's a dopamine-driven loop that keeps pulling them back in. Now here's where things take an interesting turn. If sports fans are strongly driven by tribal instinct and dopamine rewards, what about the people who feel nothing at all? Psychology suggests that non-sports fans often have a lower tribal instinct. Their sense of identity isn't deeply tied to belonging to a group. They don't feel the same pull toward us versus them, thinking that fuels so much of sports culture. In fact, research has shown that people with low interest in sports are significantly less likely to automatically divide the world into sides. They're less reactive to group conflict, less emotionally invested in collective wins or losses. Put simply, sports fans tend to build identity through group affiliation. Non-fans tend to build identity through individuality, and part of this difference may come down to biology. Some studies suggest that variations in dopamine receptor sensitivity can influence how strongly someone responds to competitive spectator-based activities. In other words, the same game that floods one brain with excitement might barely register in another. But there's also something deeper. For some people, watching others compete simply doesn't trigger emotional engagement. They're not wired to feel invested in outcomes they don't directly influence. They don't get the same thrill from indirect competition. And instead of needing to belong to a team, they feel complete standing on their own. There's a psychological concept that explains a lot of sports behavior, and it's called burging, basking in reflected glory. You've probably heard it before without noticing it. When a team wins, fans say, "We won." But when that same team loses, it suddenly becomes, "They lost." That subtle shift in language reveals something deeper. People are psychologically attaching their self-esteem to the success of the team. When the team performs well, it feels like a personal victory. It boosts confidence, pride, even identity. And when the team fails, distancing language protects the ego. It's a way of borrowing success without actually earning it. Now compare that to people who don't follow sports. Non-sports fans are far less likely to define themselves through external victories. Their sense of identity tends to be more internally grounded. They don't rely on a team's performance to feel successful or validated. Instead, they often place their self-worth in things they directly control: personal goals, creative work, meaningful relationships. Their wins are their own. And because of that, their self-esteem is often more stable, less influenced by outcomes they can't control. It's not that one approach is better than the other. It's just two very different ways of defining what it means to win. At this point, it might seem like sports fans are simply more emotional or more engaged. But that's not quite true, because empathy doesn't disappear. It just gets redirected. Sports fans often invest a surprising amount of emotional energy into players and teams. They feel tension, excitement, even heartbreak for people they've never met. In many ways, they're practicing real empathy, just within the world of sports. But non-sports fans aren't lacking that capacity. They simply allocate it differently. Instead of following athletes, they might feel deeply moved by art, music, or storytelling. They may become absorbed in scientific ideas, fascinated by nature, or emotionally invested in personal relationships and real-world causes. Research supports this shift. Studies have found that people with low interest in sports often score higher in openness to experience, meaning they seek stimulation through creativity, exploration, and abstract thinking. So the difference isn't emotional depth, it's direction. The brain is still searching for meaning, connection, and stimulation. It just chooses a different path to find it. Different focus, same human need. There's a deeper psychological difference at play here, and it comes down to how people choose to engage with the world. Psychologists often describe this as parasocial versus direct engagement. Sports fans tend to form parasocial connections, emotional bonds with people they don't actually know. They follow athletes, track their journeys, and feel invested in outcomes they can't influence. It's a one-sided relationship, but it feels real because the emotional experience is real. Non-sports people, on the other hand, often prefer direct engagement. They gravitate toward areas where their actions actually matter. Instead of watching performance, they participate in it. They build things, learn skills, create art, solve problems. Their satisfaction comes from involvement, not observation. It's not about being more active or more passive. It's about where the emotional payoff comes from. Some people are drawn to watching a story unfold. The drama, the unpredictability, the spectacle. Others feel more fulfilled being inside the story themselves, shaping outcomes, creating progress, experiencing growth firsthand. Neither approach is right or wrong. They simply reflect two fundamentally different ways of experiencing meaning, control, and connection in life. At the deepest level, the difference between sports fans and non-sports fans comes down to one thing: how they experience meaning. For sports fans, meaning often lives inside narrative. Rivalries, underdog stories, championship runs, these aren't just games, they're emotional arcs. There's tension, uncertainty, victory, and defeat. It's storytelling in real time, with stakes that feel real precisely because they're unpredictable. For non-sports fans, that same unpredictability can feel empty. Instead, They tend to find meaning in things that are more personal and self-directed, ideas that challenge how they think, creative work that reflects who they are, experiences that shape their own life story. In psychology, you could think of this as two different sources of meaning. Narrative meaning, found in observing powerful stories unfold, and personal meaning, found in creating your own. Both satisfy the same human need to feel engaged, connected, and purposeful. They just answer that need in completely different ways. One watches the story, the other becomes it. So if you've never cared about sports, here's what really matters. It doesn't mean you lack passion. It doesn't mean you're missing out on something essential. It simply means your brain is wired to seek stimulation, meaning, and connection in a different way. While others find excitement in competition and shared identity, you may find it in ideas, creativity, or building something of your own. And that difference isn't a weakness. It's just a different path. You're not broken, you're not boring, you're just playing a completely different game. If this made you think differently, you'll want to explore how quiet and independent minds process the world in ways most people never notice. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next deep psychology video.